o'clock where I am actually, so it's
Really?
not too
Not
bad.
at all. It's 8 over here where I'm at, so Lord knows.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Transitioning Without Lenses. We have a special guest. Lord knows we've been talking about it and dropping hints about it for a while now in our other episodes, and a lot of people have been talking about it, waiting for it. So here we are with our special guest. How about you introduce yourself?
My name is Shannon Anderson. I am a mom of two, soon to be three, and I'm excited to be on the show.
Hey, we're excited to have you, and congratulations. Childbirth is a mixed bag of things. Lord knows it's a joy, a lot of pain, and a lot of craziness and a lot of emotions. I've had three myself, so I totally understand where you're coming from. Now, with you being pregnant during this time, this confusing time of Corona, I know like they're only allowing 1 or 2 people in the delivery room, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, so right now the guidelines where I am is 1 support person, and then possibly a doula if you have it pre-approved. But yeah, only 1 support person, which can be the husband or spouse or family member, and they're not allowed to leave during that time. They have to stay in the room with you.
Really? Now that's crazy. I know I had to take multiple breaks the first time around, so that's pretty crazy. But good. I'm glad at least you can have some support there and not just go through it alone. I know my mom had went off to the hospital a couple times this year, and we could only talk to her over the phone. They wouldn't allow visitation or anything like that. And she found out she had sugar, and we had this like off-site training to like give her the medicine and everything, which was a little jarring, but still. It's a learning experience. I mean, we all have to readjust this new time, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. When I was having my son before, it was only about 7 months ago now, I was worried that they weren't going to allow any support people in. They were going to make the guidelines stricter. So it's good that they're loosening them up a little bit. Hopefully they'll change them even more.
Well, hopefully, COVID hopefully dies down and goes away. I mean, it seems like the flu at this point seems like something that's not going to leave anytime soon.
Yeah, I know. It seems like that for sure.
Unfortunate. So, I guess my first question would be, do you have all boys? It seems that way, at least.
So I have 1 boy. I have a girl. My oldest is a girl. She's 2. And then my son is 7. He was my first boy.
Fortunately, I got all girls, so Lord knows it's been a hard ride.
Yeah, girls are tough, definitely. My boy has been tougher in the infant period, but my girl was a pretty easy baby, so.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Hopefully this next one will also be pretty easy, despite the gender.
I hope so.
Hopefully you're not doing any too big gender reveals. I don't want to hear about any wildfires or anything. We blew up a factory.
No wildfires. Yeah, we want something boring for sure. Nothing with any sparks or flames.
Okay, that's good to hear. A change from the usual at this point.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump right into the deeper topics. Lord knows I'm a man of tradition myself. My father's a man of tradition, so forth and so on. I mean, our country's built off these traditions. But not all traditions are good, per se. One of these traditions is circumcision itself. Now, I can't really speak for the uncircumcised, but I don't know the difference personally because I'm circumcised. So how about you give us a little bit more information on what the difference may be?
So, I'll just jump into the story right here of how I came into the topic. So everybody that I've had any experience with has been circumcised. When I got pregnant with my son, it was something that I just kind of always assumed that we would do. And so when I got further along into my pregnancy, I started doing some research on it, and it just didn't sit right with me. Just the thought of my son going through pain after he was born. And so I looked further into the topic, and I read some pretty astounding stuff, honestly. It's a tradition here in the U.S., but it's not very common practice anywhere else in the world. And the reason for that being, there are a few reasons, honestly. The biggest reason is doctors tend to not know very much about the intact male genitalia. So they're kind of scared, it seems, of the prepuce or foreskin. They don't really know how to take care of it. They don't know much about whole male anatomy. So it seems like they kind of tend to recommend to parents that they circumcise their children.
For their own benefit.
So, Yeah. And so it's something also that's not covered by state insurance nowadays, like Medicaid. It's not covered by state insurance anymore
But that's all out of
in a
pocket.
lot of states. Yeah. So you can kind of look at that and see that there might be a little bit of an ultimatum there on the doctor's part, because maybe they're getting more money, because this is the most common cosmetic procedure in the US at this point. So, and it's $300 out of pocket per child, and there are almost 2 million boys per year that are being circumcised as infants. So you can kind of do the math on that and see how much revenue they're making.
That's an industry that, shoot, you can't shake a stick at that money.
Yeah. So yeah, and I started researching it and just kind of looked into it, and I read about some of the pros of circumcision that they've talked about, that doctors have claimed, and it's a little bit of a gray area there, because they have done studies. So the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, before 2012, they had on their website that they didn't recommend circumcision infant. We're talking about routine infant circumcision. So a baby being born completely healthy and then just removing the foreskin because they think it's preventative. So the AAP didn't recommend that before 2012. And then in 2012, they released a new study that they had done in Africa. And this study had been done on adult African men. It wasn't done on infants. So they had done this study on adult African men who had volunteered to be circumcised for the study.
Really now? And, that's wild.
Yeah.
I don't think I could ever just be like, sure, why not? Let me see the difference.
Yeah. And so they were paid for it. And so they did this study on these African men. And in this time, there are a few things that aren't very well controlled here. So they weren't told not to use condoms during intercourse. And this is in a country where HIV and AIDS and everything like that rapidly is already pretty prevalent compared to the US. So in the US, it's a little bit lower. So they weren't told not to wear condoms. So that kind of skews the results a little bit. So this study was a little bit, if you look into it, it doesn't have the details and everything that it seems like it should to support routine infant circumcision. Mm-hmm. So once I looked into all of that and just read the studies and really, really looked into it, it kind of disproved the claims of preventing UTIs and preventing STIs and stuff like that. So
that's wild. Most of my information about circumcision, unfortunately, especially because I'm American, comes from South Park. There's a specific episode that they have, like, I guess, advertising it almost, where all the kids go and get a circumcision, and they're like, okay, it makes you look bigger, it's more cleaner, it's more sanitary and safe. So, all those things are kind of just bred into me, and every time I talk about it with friends, that's always, the rhetoric that we repeat to each other, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is something nowadays. It is a topic of humor, and I mean, it makes sense. People tend to think genitals are funny, so of course there's going to be some humor around it. Now, I can see the humorous side of it, but I think that it is a little bit more serious of a topic than some people see it as, because this is, if you think about it, this is an infant that you're performing this circumcision on,
This changes a person's life forever.
That's consenting to this procedure. That's completely different. But the fact that it's routine in the U.S. to perform this on infants that are less than a month old, that just kind of makes it a little bit less humorous to me. Give me just 1 second.
No problem. I totally understand.
So, yeah, since this is performed on infants, it makes it more serious. And I feel like the humorous side of that also doesn't really talk so much about the benefits of having a foreskin. So and that's not something a lot of people go over, like most American men.
It seems to be taboo almost.
Yeah, it is taboo, and that's the thing that's quite unfortunate, is that people see it as taboo so much that they won't talk about it.
I mean, there's this one female I had the pleasure of meeting that she said that she just thought it was disgusting. She had like all these weird hangups about it, even though, that wasn't my problem personally, but she said I could never be with a man like that. And I was like, that's not his choice, I mean, at that point, it's just too late for him. No one's going to go and be like, okay, let's go, let's fix that up and we can date and all this other stuff. I mean, that's not something you do just for off whim.
Yeah, and that's the thing nowadays. I have run into a lot of women who they seem to be uneducated on exactly how the foreskin does work, and a lot of women aren't aware that women also have a foreskin.
Really?
The clitoral hood is actually the woman's foreskin. It's called a prepuce, and it protects the clitoral hood. So, just like the foreskin on a man protects the glands, the head of the penis, the foreskin on a woman, the prepuce, protects the clitoris. So,
That's wild.
some women aren't aware of that.
And I believe most men are not.
Yeah,
Or
I don't think so. Yeah, and
they
so
can barely find it in the first place.
women, they talk about smegma and stuff, and they aren't aware that women also have smegma. It's a natural oil that is produced to prevent infections and to produce lubricant.
And what is smegma exactly? I've never heard this term.
So smegma it's just oils and skin cells. It's kind of like um,
The oils that come out your scalp.
yeah, basically. So just like you get some oils on your face, on your hands sometimes. So that's basically what it is, and it just collects under the foreskin. It can collect in multiple spots in the genitals, and that is one thing that circumcision does reduce. It reduces the production of smegma, which isn't actually necessarily a positive thing because that does provide lubricant during sexual activity. So it is actually a negative thing, and it is protective against STIs and against urinary tract infections.
Really? That's wild. That's amazing. So you're telling me we have natural lubricant, but we go to the store and buy it instead?
Yep, and that's exactly why, if you look it up, the United States is actually the number one consumer for lubricants for sexual activity.
Wow. That's wild. But continue. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So there are the main thing, if you look at routine infant circumcision, you can look at it and you can see, maybe it's a medical choice that people are making for their children. But if you look into the definitions, it's not actually considered a medical procedure. It's considered cosmetic. It was considered medical previously, but they've done so much research on it that they don't consider it medical anymore. Most health organizations will consider it cosmetic. So if you take away the prospect that it could be a medical thing and look at it as cosmetic, it's not really something that parents should be deciding for their children, because it should be a choice that they make when they're older.
Very true. Yeah. Which in this day and age, I will say a lot of parents tend to overstep their boundaries and make a lot of decisions for children, especially with the boom of transgenderism. Sorry, got caught up in my words there. I have a lot of transgender friends myself, but they're thankful that, their parents didn't go ahead and make those decisions for them and didn't go ahead and start giving them hormones, because they find out later on in life that that's not really the path they wanted to choose, even though that they may be, homosexual or transgender. Either way, they still want to be completely normal and not be, pumped up with hormones. Nothing to say there's anything wrong with that. If you feel that you are trapped inside the wrong body and you and your parents agree that, that's the right way to go, I understand. But, at such a young age, without being fully developed, I'd hate to, force that on somebody.
And I'm actually glad that you mention full development, because that is another aspect of infant circumcision that is complicated and isn't something that's looked at very often. So if you've seen a male baby, you can see that their genitals aren't developed. They're small, they're underdeveloped. And so if you look at circumcision and you see these physicians are taking away the foreskin, and they can't really judge how much is going to be needed later on in life. And that actually plays into one of the complications that can happen due to infant circumcision. They can remove too much skin because you can't really judge how much a little boy is going to grow.
Especially during
so
puberty.
If they remove too much skin, that can lead to painful erections, and it can actually lead to a bow in the penis. And it can cause a lot of issues later on in life.
And I assume the surgeries to fix all that are not complimentary, nor are they considered to be necessary. They're also cosmetic.
But it's not something that's that most insurances will cover. It would be considered another cosmetic procedure. I apologize.
You're fine.
it would be considered a cosmetic procedure. If there's not an infection happening, if it's just, pain during intercourse, then it would definitely be considered cosmetic and would be pretty difficult for a man to get covered by insurance. So
that is wild. I mean, if anything, that's a danger to our reproductive whole society, evolution in general, just because of a decision made when you were not old enough to even speak, now you can't go ahead and have sex, for lack of a better term, or intercourse, and go ahead and sow your seed and go ahead and make more of you, I guess.
Yeah, and it is something, if you think about it. I mean, circumcision it dates back, centuries, millennia. It's one of the oldest surgery practices.
And if I'm not mistaken, it comes from the Judaism faith.
It actually that's a more modern faith. It was actually before that. Even Egyptians used to practice it before Judaism was even a thing. So it is something. It's one of the oldest procedures that has ever been recorded, and that's why it makes it so much more complicated, because we have been doing this for so long. But if you look back to then, that was even a small percent of the population. So nowadays, it's about 30% of the worldwide is circumcised, and that includes Muslims, Africans, and a few smaller countries, like I think it's either North or South Korea does practice it also. So there are a few countries that do practice it, and most of the time it's not for religious reasons. It's for the cosmetic purposes.
Good to know. Lord knows, it seems as if there's no way to really change the way society looks at it without kind of just having that open conversation. And that's the main reason why we wanted to have this talk with you. Because a lot of us on the team were really ignorant on it until, you had brought up the subject. One of my friends, she had a son, and she had told me she had, without even second thought, of course, got him circumcised. And I had talked to her about it for a while. And, we showed her some of the research and showed her some of the video testimonies of people that have had bad experience with the things. And of course, afterwards, she was very remorseful about it, but there's not much you can do after that. There's no surgery to fix it. There's no surgery to kind of like go back and be like, okay, put it back, or, cosmetically put something else up there,
And that is also something that I wanted to talk about is, so there is a group called Your Whole Baby. They're a group on Facebook. They also have their own website. And on this Facebook page specifically, there are a lot of people that are called regret parents. And they're parents who have previously circumcised one of their children and then learned about the detriments of it. And it's not to say necessarily that you have to be regretful for making that choice. You don't have to live with, just grief for the rest of your life for making that choice for your child, but you can learn better and do better. That's the motto that Your Whole Baby goes by. If you learn better, you do better. So it is something that is complicated to talk to parents who have done it to their children, because it's so hard. It's cognitive dissonance. Yes. So you have that. Sorry.
No, it's more than fine. I totally understand. As a parent myself, there are a lot of decisions that I've made that sometimes, I still stay awake at night thinking to myself, should my daughters have really got their ears pierced at such young ages? What if they don't want them anymore? When they grow up, what if they feel like, these holes are there and they won't ever close, Dad? What's up with that? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I thought you looked pretty. Yep, and something so simple and small. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that you just do, and parents make those choices. I didn't get my daughter's ears pierced, but I did think about it. And that's another thing too that I forgot to mention. I did think about getting my son circumcised. I could easily have been one of those parents that had circumcised their sons, and I would never have known better. I would have defended that choice. But I just happened across some article that just changed my mind and made me think more about it. So ear piercing is a little bit on a lesser scale. I wouldn't personally make that choice for my child, because I don't see the point of doing something that, can alter their ears, and they might not even wear them in the future.
Not to mention the downside of what happens if it goes wrong, infection, the kilos that happen. Exactly. There's so much stuff.
And that's where you have to weigh it and see, there is the possibility of death here, even with an ear piercing, there's the possibility of death. You get an infection so bad it gets into ear canal, it gets into your brain, and your child dies. Is that really worth the cosmetic appearance? And that's another thing with infant circumcision that people don't realize, is the risk of death is there, and it does happen more often than you're told that it does. It's 1% of boys. And that's,
it's bigger than
if you think about the fact that it's 2 million baby boys that are being circumcised in the US, that's a lot of boys. So,
jeez. Just thinking that, you're trying to follow the norm, trying to be safe. Like I said, everyone thinks it's cleaner, safer, and, you're thinking you're helping out your child. In all honesty, you might be sending them to an early grave, and that's a scary decision that, you took 5 seconds to make, and you made the appointment in less time, in all honesty.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that every parent is just trying to make the best choice for their child. My belief on this isn't that, every parent should have the choice for their child. My belief on this is that there shouldn't be a choice. There should not be the option of circumcising your boy. You would never even consider circumcising a girl. If you cut the labia off of a girl, I'm sure that would be considered cleaner too. It would be easier to wipe. It would prevent things from getting stuck in there, infections. But you would never consider that because we view it as cruel.
Well, nowadays, of course, but I remember at least back in the 50s, at least my dad was telling me, like, that was just something that happened, They didn't really have too much research on it. And to be honest, it sounds like we don't have too much research on this either. It sounds like we're too scared to research genitalia to actually figure out what's necessary, what's not necessary, and what's just for fun at this point.
It's true. The U.S. is just, we're embarrassed. We're just embarrassed about our sexuality. And that's really, detrimental to men's lives. And I feel like, so you were speaking about girls being circumcised in the 50s. That actually wasn't made illegal until the 90s, but it is illegal now to circumcise girls.
That's wild.
So
that's pretty recent.
But it's still legal to circumcise boys. And you have to wonder, why are we allowing this to happen to our baby boys, but we protect our girls? And it kind of plays a little bit into the belief that boys are supposed to be strong and, they're supposed to just suck it up and not talk about it. And girls are just these fragile things to protect. And we really have to
step away from that.
Balance that out and consider that, people are people, and regardless of their genitals, they need to be treated equally.
Heck yeah. Like I like to tell people all the time, there is no mold, or there is no pre-designed vision of a man. When you go out here, you make your own definition of who you are as a person, or as a man, or as a woman. No one should tell you, okay, you have to do this, you have to be this, you have to cook, you have to clean. No matter who you are, that's something that's special to you. Everyone has different aspects of their lives that they achieve in and go better at than other people. That's what makes us special as individuals. But when we start cookie cutting everything from the beginning, it kind of cuts down those aspects and cuts down our ways to be unique and special.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that more people are of that mindset in this day and age. I think that people are becoming more aware that we can't be cookie cutting people. We can't be separating men and women, and the gender norms just need to stop and everything like that. So I do feel like routine infant circumcision will be abolished soon, just because you do see the change in people. You see that we're more aware of human rights, and we shouldn't be making these decisions for our children.
For sure. If anything, it should be a crime, if you ask me, just popping up and deciding something like that so quick, or at least a penalty. With all that being said, after all this research was done, how did your husband feel about this kind of stuff? I assume he was also circumcised.
Yeah. So, one second. Sorry.
Take your time.
So yes, my husband is circumcised, and it took a while. So there was a little bit of controversy on it. So I didn't actually make the decision to not circumcise him until after he was born. I had done all of the research. I had watched all of these videos and seen all these things. And I didn't actually make the choice until he was about 2 weeks old. Sorry. I didn't make the choice until he was about 2 weeks old to not circumcise him. And I just kind of didn't make the appointment and didn't talk to my husband about it for a while. And, it came up eventually. He was just like, are we going to do this? And I said, no, we're not going to. And he was upset for a while. He was very upset about it, and he didn't understand. And then one day I was watching a documentary called American Circumcision, and he was in the room. He kind of started paying attention to it, and he saw all of these things that I had been telling him, and he was hearing it for himself. And he was like, you know what? We made the right choice here. This isn't something that we should have chosen to do, and I'm glad we didn't. And so now we'll talk about it every now and then, and he knows how passionate I am about the subject, and he supports me, and he supports the decision that I made, and he, it's very complicated for men who are having children and men who have sons. There's this idea that fathers and sons should look alike,
yes.
But it's definitely something that men have to get past. They have to get past a mistake that was made on them. You don't need matching scars.
Hey, that's very true.
You would never cut the arm off of your child if you had lost your arm, It's
hopefully not.
Yeah, so it's just, it's not something that's necessary to do, and I think that it's important to be educated on it. And I think this is where a lot of mothers have to kind of take a stand here, because me personally, when I made this choice, or actually, I don't like saying made a choice, because there never should have been a choice, honestly. It shouldn't have been an option.
Very true.
So I think that a lot of women are the first ones. I was the first in my family to say no to it, and I was the black sheep. I was the one that was saying that I wasn't gonna do this, and it was a little bit hard at first, but now I've kind of gotten some of my family members to look at it and see, well, she's right, and all of these things that she's sharing, this is a good thing that she did.
I will say that being courageous doesn't have many rewards. Being trendsetters, there's a lot different stuff. But when you go out there and you really take a stand, the real rewards is when the light bulb turns on for other people and they see, well, you were right. All this research, all these things, this all adding up, and then you start seeing this. You start to see that you're making a difference.
Yes, and that's true. That's the thing for me, is like, there was a while there where I was really trying to get that message out there. I was really trying to get people to see that this is not something that's okay, and this is something we need to be talking about more. And then I kind of started to see, well, maybe it starts with me, and it starts with my family. And I was able to, because my mom had actually had my brother circumcised, and I was able to talk to my mother about it. Sorry, I've got a cat in the background. I was able to talk to my mother about it, and she was like, well, you know what, you're right. And this is a choice that I made for your brothers, and I wish I hadn't made this choice, and I wouldn't make this choice again.
Wow, that's really
And so
crazy.
that was really eye-opening for me, that I had swayed somebody, I had changed somebody's opinion.
I know. Yeah. I had this conversation with my dad. He was like, well, what do you want to do about it now? that was kind of his sentiment. He was like, it's too late now, man. Like, oh, well. Yeah. No listening to the pros and cons. He was like, hey, I'm too old to have a child, man. That's on you. Good information. You're here. Have a nice one. Yeah. It's kind of one and done.
Yeah, and it's a really hard thing, because I know that one of my brothers has had issues from being circumcised, and he did talk to my mom about it, and she was like, well, there's nothing I can do about it now. And this was before I had talked to her, and she was just like, well, that's your problem. I made the choice for you. You deal with it now. And now she looks back and she's like, you know what, that is on me. That was a decision that I made, and it did do him harm. So you can admit fault. I think that that's a real problem with people, is that they can't admit fault.
Especially in 2020.
And it is okay to admit that you did something wrong. It's better to admit that you did something wrong and to move on and to apologize.
They always say the first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. And I think that applies to more than just, addicts and addiction and recovering from that. I think that applies to all of life, admitting that you've failed or have done something wrong and trying to change, and that's the start of a whole different thing.
Yeah, I agree, for sure. It's you just have to admit fault, it's once you learn something, and that's cognitive dissonance, if you learn new information, and you have to kind of just let your ego go, you have to just let it go and accept that what you thought might have been right was actually wrong. So
very true. Well, I will say we're getting close to the time limit, so I will ask you a couple questions that are different from what we've been talking about. If you were able to tell America one thing, even if it's about circumcision, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that things aren't as important as they think they are sometimes. Let the little things go and focus on your family. Focus on yourself and who you love, and try to let the little things go and live your life as best you can.
Heck yeah, you can't let those little things eat you up inside, because Lord knows there's a lot of things I stay up until 3 a.m. thinking to myself, I think I said 2 in the wrong way. But, you know, stuff like that has to be let go to get some sleep at night at least.
For sure.
My next question is, what is peace of mind to you? I'm sure that once you found out that you made the right decision, you found some peace of mind. But other than that, what is real peace of mind to you?
I think peace of mind is just being comfortable with the choices that you've made, and, you know, not worrying too much about things in the past and not worrying too much about the future, and just living in the moment, you know. Like, obviously don't be foolish and don't make foolish decisions and say, you know, just we'll think about that later, but just try to appreciate the moment that you're in right now instead of thinking too much about the past or the future. And I'd say that's peace of mind.
For sure. I mean, Lord knows, I make way too many plans, and then I'll sit there in the future and be like, how many of those have I achieved yet? Then I'll get caught up in the past and the future and not live in the present. You know, what's actually happening now. I'll miss, you know, the amazing sunset or just the leaves turning colors in fall, which is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, you just have to appreciate those little things for sure.
Heck yes, the little things in life that make it worth it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. Lord knows this was an amazing topic, and I for sure got educated, and I hope a lot of our audience does too. And I hope any hopeful to be mothers with sons and or daughters will watch this and think to themselves, it's time to do a little bit more research instead of thinking, do we have all the stuff we need for this baby to be born? Because for sure, while you might have all the resources, wipes, bassinet, I don't know if people still use bassinets, but I did. You know,
I did too.
Exactly. Stuff like that. Maybe you'll think, what decisions am I going to be making for this child until they can make decisions for themselves? And how can I make the best decision?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really enjoyed being able to talk about this topic, and I hope that maybe you can share my information so anybody can reach out if they're curious
we
about
will link
further
you
education.
in whatever group that you're part of inside of the link. I'm not mistaken, it's Your Whole Baby is one of the groups.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, ma'am. I'll link it to that, the Facebook group, and any other group that you send me later on. So hopefully people can get educated. We can start this movement to change America and to change our thoughts on what a cookie cutter family should be. At this point, it shouldn't be existing.
That's the goal for sure.
Okay. Well, I hope you have a good night, and I hope your son gets some rest. Lord knows he seems a little rest.
Yeah, thank you so much for being patient. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
You're fine. It's a pleasure talking to you too, and I hope you have a beautiful night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.